Hello and welcome to Sharkies as we preview round 5 of the Dominic Smith Expert Electrical Senior Football Championship, and I'm here with Wexford Senior Football Manager John Hegarty. And John, before we get into discussing the matches at the weekend, you're back for a third year in charge of the Wexford Senior Footballers in 2025. How would you reflect on 2024, and are you looking forward to the year ahead?
Yeah, reflecting on last year, we certainly improved our performances on the year before. We were very unlucky when you look back at it, in that we finished joint second in the division, and with a score difference that was 25 points better than the team that qualified, and so much hung on that decision in Leitrim. But that being said, I thought, apart from once or twice that we were disappointed with our own performances against Laois and against Tipperary, but other than that, I thought there was a level of consistency and progression from the year before. We had a good chat at the end of the year, and the players are really keen to continue progressing, because the last couple of years there's been a rotation of managers nearly on a 2-year cycle, and so they were very keen that we should all go again, and I think that's the most important thing. If the players' appetite and desire is there, the backroom team were all to a person keen to go again, and look, the county board did the review. They were clearly happy with what's going on, and we'd look to hopefully progress again this year.
And obviously getting out of Division 4 has been a little bit of a bogey in the last few years, finishing third a couple of times, I think, and as you say, we were very close last year, so I suppose trying to get up the grades is maybe an early season target.
Look, that's the frustration. When you look at maybe the performances against Louth, who went on to finish in the last 8 of the All-Ireland series, and against Sligo in the Talon Cup, like I've been saying it, and I firmly believe it, that these players are capable of playing at a higher standard, but the frustration has been that we haven't done the business early in the season to make sure that promotion was secured, and that's certainly the target this year.
And no doubt you've had a keen eye on the 4 rounds so far, and we have another weekend now at the coming up. What have you made of the championship so far?
Hard to really gauge it because of the stop-start nature of the 2 weeks on, or week on, week off, and I think that has probably impacted a little bit of the quality in both codes. Certainly there isn't the same progression and the skills haven't improved week on week that you might have seen last year in the format, but that being said, I think that this week is where, maybe last week to a degree, but certainly this week is where the championship really kicks off, and you have a senior championship where all 12 teams have got something to play for in terms of progressing to the quarterfinals, and I'd like to think that there'll be a little bit more cut in the championship this weekend. But also I think that, looking at individual players, it has been certainly good to see the county lads performing well for their clubs, but equally there's some young players out there who have been shown up well in football, and I'm looking forward to hopefully talking to a couple of those in a couple of weeks' time.
So all performances will be kept an eye on by John and his management team as they look ahead to 2025. Now, as we look ahead to the coming weekend, there are, I suppose, 8 qualification spots up for grabs in the football championship, and there are only 3 guaranteed: Castletown, Shelmaliers and Gusseron, and the positions that those teams could end up in are still yet to be decided as well. Just to do a bit of, I suppose, housekeeping in terms of, there's bound to be a tie at some stage. Lots of people have asked me in the last few days what happens if there's an event of a tie. Well, Colin Lambert, the county PRO, has put in a lot of time and effort into an explainer, and it's on the Wexford GA website, so if you want a full version of it, you can log on there and check it. But for now, just to if 2 teams are tied on the same number of points, the result of the game between the 2 teams will be what decides who is higher ranked, and if that game was a draw, well, then it's the overall score difference between those 2 sides. It gets a bit trickier in the case of a 3-way tie, which there's a very good chance we'll have in one of these groups. So if there's a 3-way tie, there's a mini league created where the results of the games between those sides and the points won by those teams in those games are ranked, and that's what decides which order the teams come in. Now, if they have all beaten each other, or if they all drew with each other, well then it's overall score difference from the entire group that decides the order of finishing. So there's a full explainer on it on the Wexford GA website for anyone who'd like to I suppose fully inform themselves ahead of round 5. And we're going to look first of all at Group A, which at the moment sees the Shelmaliers on top with 7 points and Gusserane in second place on 6 points. Both of those sides are guaranteed qualification. The Sarsfields are in third place on 4 points. Nevena are in fourth place on 3 points. St James's also have 3 points, and Bunclody have a point at the foot of the table. We'll look first of all, I suppose, Shelmaliers and the Sarsfields, John, both of them played in Wexford Park at the weekend. The Sarsfields got a draw. The Shelmaliers got a 1 point victory over Gusserane. What have you made of both sides so far?
To date, I suppose, in this group, Gusserane and Shelmaliers would have been the two favourite teams, and to this point they have performed accordingly. Shelmaliers have been good without really hitting the highlights, which I suppose is what you're looking for in a team that's building towards the latter stage of the championship. The game last Friday night in the park was a good game between the two of them, and they barely came out on top against Gusserane. I think Sarsfields will take an awful lot of confidence out of how they've performed this year so far, and I think in the last couple of years, this year is the first year that you can say they have been really consistent. Up until now they maybe had 1 or 2 big performances but fell away poorly in other ones. I think there's a significant improvement in the level of their consistency this year, and I suppose of all of the teams that like Gusserane and Shells do have the opportunity to rest a couple of players if they need to. And bearing in mind what's coming ahead in the weeks ahead, if Shelmaliers were to rest a couple of lads, like they're qualified in the hurling, they'll be giving that a really good rattle, and likewise they'll be looking to go deep into the football. That may make this an evener game than you would have otherwise anticipated. That being said, I think that maybe it's a year too soon for Sarsfields, and while they've got lots of young footballers, and if they keep them together they'll be a force in years to come. I think this time around just savvy and experience might be enough to see Shelmaliers coming out on it.
Yeah, there were a couple of Sarsfield's men mentioned to me at the weekend that this was the first year in a long time that they didn't go into, that they were, I suppose, safe from relegation even after 3 rounds. They didn't go into round 4 worrying about it, and they didn't go into round 5. They're not going into round 5 worrying about it either. So maybe they'll be able to play with a little bit more freedom and not as much pressure on them from that point of view. The next game in the group is, I suppose, a local derby. It's going to be played down in New Ross at 4 o'clock on Sunday between St James's and Gusserane. And both sides have had good battles over the years. Gusserane have certainly been in better form lately, John, but St James's and Gusserane has always been a fairly tight affair.
Yeah, tight and tasty sometimes as well. And I think probably the most unfortunate team at the weekend were St James's, because they might have thought that their result would have given them safety, but the gory draw has meant that they're right back in the mix again. Things haven't been going well from, and I think it's hard to underestimate the loss that Darragh Lyons has been, because over the last year or two he has really developed into being a key figure for them, and I think that has hurt them. And when you add on top of that Brian Malloy to be missing for the whole season again, they're 2 quality players that will hurt anybody. Yes, Matthew Hanlon and Cog will keep things going, and when it comes to a local derby they certainly won't be found wanting. On the other side of it, Gusserane have been very impressive in the early rounds, and even last weekend Minnie Ryan and Mark Rossiter were probably the 2 standout forwards of the weekend in their performance against the Shells. But local derby, all bets are off, and really it will be tight the whole way.
Yeah, and St James's are they're not even safe from the foot of the table. If Halfway House Bunclody get a win against Gorey and St James's lose in this game, there'll be a 3-way tie on 3 points at the bottom of the table, and the score difference will come into the play there. So even if St James's were on the wrong side of it, being only very slightly on the wrong side of it would be very important, and every point will count. Who do you think is going to win, John?
I think if Gosran had got the win last week, I think that would have given them comfort in knowing they topped the table, etc. And they would have then been able to maybe, take the foot off and rest a couple of players. As I said, neither of these two teams will want to lose to the opponents. And I'd maybe go for a little bit of a shock here. I think St James's need might be more than Gusran's on this occasion. And I think that, like, all guns blazing, a very narrow victory for St James's.
Okay, and I'm going to go against John. I'm going to go with Gusran for the win here, and I'm also going to go with the Shelmaliers for the win. I forgot to say that in the first game we discussed. And the third game in the group is Naveena against Halfway House Bunclody. Naveena's first year up in senior. They have for a long time. They have 3 points so far, John. Halfway House Bunclody, their solitary point came rather surprisingly, I suppose, against the league leaders Shelmaliers.
Yeah, and looking back on that result, you'd be scratching your head to see how did that happen, because in another couple of the games, they haven't reached those levels at all. Gorey, I think, are a team that have huge potential for the future. When you look at the age profile of their team and the quality, so many of those lads have played minor and under 21 football for Wexford, and I think that if they can continue to develop, I think in years to come they'll be potential contenders for winning county titles. Right now, Bunclody have clearly set out how they intend to play for the year, and it's very defensive, and they frustrate, and they're really difficult to play against. I'm not sure that's going to win them an awful lot of games, as we've seen, but it does make it difficult to break them down, and I think that Gorey are going to find that a significant challenge the weekend, and for younger players that's something that is hard to come up against, especially your first year up. So I think that it'll be a low scoring, tight affair, but I think that maybe Bunclody will frustrate Gorey and they may come away with a narrow win here.
One feature that I mentioned on commentary the weekend about the Naveena side is there are a lot of players on their first team that wouldn't be on their first hurling team. They've lots of difference between the squads, and that kind of helps when you're trying to sustain a senior team in both codes.
Yeah, it does, and I suppose that isn't the norm around the county, but it's a reflection maybe on the amount of players that Gorey have, and it's certainly, as a club, Gorey are heading in the right direction when you consider what they've been doing in senior hurling and now to be senior football, and I think to be credible competitors in their first year, but at the same time the age profile is something that is really positive for the club going forward. But when you look at some of the campaigners that they're going to be up against in Aidan Nolan and Martin O'Connor, and there's a lot of experience on that Bunclody team, and look, I think it'll be a something that Gorey need to go into with their eyes wide open, and if they can manage that, there's no doubt they have the quality. But like I say, it could be a frustrating day at the office.
Yeah, I think it could be quite a low scoring game as well, and I'm going to go for a low scoring draw in this one, which unfortunately, if it were to pan out, wouldn't be any use to Bunclody at all, but it could well be of use to Naveena.